In the command tent, officers argue furiously. Some demand immediate pursuit, pressing for a search-and-destroy approach. Others caution restraint, suggesting that the women may be using psychological tactics to manipulate perception. The tension between caution and aggression creates a storm in the minds of the commanders. Meanwhile, field reports trickle in. A few guards insist they glimpse shadows moving through the smoke in perfect formation, silhouettes vanishing as soon as they were seen. The women appear everywhere and nowhere, a phenomenon both terrifying and incomprehensible. Each sighting contradicts the next, defying logic, frustrating strategy, an escalating fear. On the ground, the situation grows more dire. Soldiers stumble into mud, injured and disoriented. Explosions in the distance, whether real or imagined, heighten the chaos. Some units accidentally fire on their own, mistaking movement for enemy action. Amid this, the women execute their invisible rule flawlessly. Even when forced into confrontation, they avoid violence, yet maintain complete control of the space around them. One incident stands out. A group of guards attempts to herd the women into a fenced area. Within seconds, the prisoners subtly adjust their positions, causing a minor collapse of barricades and forcing the guards into confusion without a single direct action. It is both brilliant and unnerving. Observers begin to describe it as a living choreography of control, a strategy beyond conventional warfare, beyond fear, beyond reason. Emotional stakes reach a fever pitch. Officers receive messages too late. Reinforcements fail to arrive in time. Promises made to higher command are broken by circumstances beyond comprehension. Soldiers cling to each other in desperation, frightened by the unknown, haunted by the rule they cannot grasp. Meanwhile, the women's cohesion is almost eerie. They communicate silently, anticipate threats, and move as one organism. Some soldiers report hearing whispered, counting almost inaudible instructions that seem to coordinate the group across distances. The rule, the invisible principle, is no longer just a survival tactic. It is a method of control that manipulates reality around them. Heroism emerges in unexpected places. A young officer defies orders to chase perceived targets, instead choosing to protect civilians in the surrounding area from the chaos. Guards risk life and limb to prevent panic from spreading into nearby villages. Meanwhile, the women themselves act with quiet courage, lifting exhausted companions, guiding those struggling without drawing attention, maintaining unity under impossible stress. These acts, subtle but profound, intensify the dramatic tension, illustrating the stark contrast between chaos and deliberate control, confusion and foresight. Throughout these hours, the visual elements become cinematic, blinking red lights in command tents, maps with shifting markers, the slow rotation of searchlights over smoke-filled clearings, intercepted signals and codes flashing across screens. Every visual cue heightens tension, emphasizes the stakes, and pulls the viewer into the unfolding drama. Each near miss, every split-second decision contributes to the crescendo. The story reaches a historic cliffhanger as reports converge. The women POWs are not just missing, they're operating under a principle that prevents conventional tracking. A rule so powerful that no strategy, no brute force, no conventional command structure can override it. And then in a moment, no historian could explain, everything changes. The invisible rule asserts itself completely. The women vanish from sight simultaneously, leaving no trace, no footprints, no disturbance, except for the abandoned uniforms and equipment, arranged meticulously. Officers stare at the empty clearing, realizing with chilling clarity that the prisoners were never merely passive captives. They were orchestrating their survival, bending perception, and disappearing under a code that no one could understand. The battlefield is still, yet charged with the intensity of what just occurred. Historians later would puzzle over this. How could a group of unarmed prisoners achieve the impossible? Maintain cohesion and disappear without a trace in the middle of wartime chaos? Asterisk. The forest lies silent once more. Smoke curls lazily over the roads, mingling with the faint smell of mud and charred earth. The shattered convoy is abandoned, the echoes of gunfire replaced by an eerie stillness. Officers and soldiers wander the area in stunned disbelief. Maps are consulted repeatedly, reports rewritten, but nothing reconciles with reality. The women, once present, observed, and recorded, have vanished without a trace. Their uniforms, neatly folded, remain as the only evidence of their existence. A testament to a rule that allowed them to escape the grasp of chaos itself. Commanders stare at the empty clearing in disbelief, some muttering quietly, others too shocked to speak. The battlefield is quiet, but the tension lingers. Like the last echo of a nightmare refusing to dissipate, official records list the women as lost during transfer. No body counts. No witness statements, no explanation of their disappearance are included in any formal documentation. Orders that arrive too late, messages misread or misunderstood, and chaos in the chain of command ensure that their disappearance becomes a footnote, easily dismissed in reports. Yet outside the bureaucracy, whispers persist. Guards who witness the events speak quietly, reluctant to mention it for fear of ridicule or reprimand. In personal diaries, letters, and private notes, fragments of the story survive. One British guard writes home, "They followed a rule I didn't understand. I think it saved them." Soviet officer records in his diary. Female prisoners vanished. No bodies found. Orders came too late. These scattered accounts hint at a truth far stranger than official documentation allows. In the years that follow, sporadic sightings appear. In the 1970s, a woman is found living quietly in Austria under a different name, the same birth date as one of the POWs. Her occupation is listed as a teacher. There is no mention of wartime service, no acknowledgement of captivity, no explanation for the years that passed. It is as though the rule they followed erased not just their physical presence, but all traces of history that could have connected them to that time. The rule becomes legend, whispered among archivists, historians, and military psychologists, a principle so absolute that it transcends logic. A code of survival never taught again, never recorded. Yet devastatingly effective, the psychological implications linger. Military historians and strategists study the fragmented intelligence reports, attempting to deduce how a group of unarmed prisoners could maintain control in the midst of armed chaos. Analysts speculate on coordinated silent signals, psychological conditioning, and extraordinary discipline. Yet no model fully accounts for their behavior. Some conclude it was a unique combination of instinct, training, and circumstance. Others suspect a deeper intelligence, an invisible framework guiding decisions with precision beyond human expectation. In either case, the result is the same. The women disappeared from view, defying capture, leaving behind only a chilling lesson in the power of order, unity, and invisible rules. Letters and memoirs that emerge decades later add layers of emotional authenticity. A surviving officer recalls the fear and awe of witnessing the women's synchronized responses to danger, describing it as like watching a force of nature obey its own unspoken laws. A historian finds fragments of a diary from one of the women, cryptic notes about standing as one and the principle that cannot bend. These accounts hint at the psychological and tactical genius behind the rule, a code that ensured survival. In a world where survival seemed impossible, emotional stakes echo through these pages. Exhaustion, fear, sacrifice, and courage intermingle, providing a haunting glimpse of what was endured and achieved. Finally, a chilling detail emerges from a declassified file in the early 21st century. An eyewitness account, previously suppressed, mentions seeing the women standing in formation on the edge of a forest clearing, their faces calm, their eyes fixed, before stepping silently into the fog and vanishing completely. The observer writes, "It was as if they were never there at all. 1 second they existed, the next only the air remained where they had stood." The file confirms what few dared to admit. The women's adherence to the rule was not merely survival, it was erasure. They became ghosts of history, present yet absent, visible yet untouchable. The story closes not with answers, but with questions. What did the rule truly mean? How did it function in practice? Could it ever be applied again? And most haunting of all, the truth about what these women saw that night. The understanding that guided every move and every choice is still locked in archives, hidden from the public, waiting for those brave enough to uncover it. A shadow of mystery persists, leaving the viewer with the unsettling sense that some truths are meant to remain unknowable, and some acts of survival transcend the ordinary boundaries of history itself. The sound comes first. Boots slamming into mud, metal scraping stone. A radio screaming through static as artillery thunders somewhere beyond the trees. Someone yells an order, but it's drowned out by panic. A column of German women, uniformed but unarmed, moves through the darkness under guard. Their breath fogs the cold air. Rifles are raised. A flare ignites overhead, bathing everything in harsh white light. And that's when the guards notice something impossible. Every woman stops at the exact same moment. Not because they were ordered to. Not because they were threatened, but because they chose to. One officer shouts for them to sit down. Standard POW protocol. They don't move. Not one. No one understands why. And what happens next will be erased from reports, buried in archives, whispered about only years later, because this wasn't defiance. It was a rule. And then something impossible happened. Eastern Front. Late 1944. Germany is collapsing from the inside. As Allied forces advance, thousands of soldiers are captured, but among them is a group that almost never appears in official histories. Female auxiliary units, radio operators, clerks, medical staff, intelligence couriers. They were not frontline fighters, but they knew things. Supply routes, command names, retreat plans, codes that made them dangerous. These women were transferred to temporary holding zones, forests, rail depots, abandoned villages, places never meant to hold prisoners long. Mistakes were made, paperwork rushed, orders unclear, guards rotated constantly, and somewhere in that chaos, officers began reporting the same unsettling detail. German women POWs were following one identical rule, even when separated. Even when questioned, even under threat. No one knew who taught them. No manual mentioned it, and no one could explain why it mattered so much. But the real danger hadn't even appeared yet. It begins with a radio log. An intercepted Allied transmission routine, almost boring, until one line makes a British signals officer freeze. Confirm female detainees remain standing. Repeat, do not allow seated position. The instruction shouldn't exist. No Allied protocol mentions it. Minutes later, a patrol reports something worse. One of the women collapses from exhaustion. Guards rush to force her down. The others react instantly. They shout not in panic, but in warning. One word. The same word. Over and over. The woman is lifted back onto her feet, and only then does the group fall silent again. No escape attempt. No violence. Just control. Later that night, a note appears in an intelligence folder unsigned. If they sit, move them immediately. But who sent the message? And why mention her specifically? The tension spreads like wildfire through command posts, with every officer questioning the unexplainable behavior. Observers in nearby camps report whispered instructions, coordinated movements, almost imperceptible signals that hint at a deeper, hidden order. The women move with uncanny precision, reacting not to commands from the guards, but to something only they understand. It is as if a single invisible rule binds them all, guiding their decisions even in the chaos of confusion, exhaustion, and fear. And in that first night after the message, the impossible becomes inevitable. The observers realize that these women are not merely prisoners. They are orchestrating their survival by a principle that no one can penetrate, a principle that will shape the events of the next critical minutes. And the next 90 seconds would determine whether anyone survived. The night descends slowly over the forested holding areas. Fog creeps along the dirt roads, curling between abandoned vehicles and piles of crates. The remnants of hastily abandoned supply depots. Somewhere in the distance, artillery rumbles like a distant storm, though no one can see where it lands. In this unnatural twilight, the guards struggle to maintain order. Radios crackle intermittently, but static dominates, feeding confusion. A single miscommunication ripples through the ranks. A misplaced code, a wrong coordinate, and suddenly, the entire operation teeters on the edge of chaos in one encampment. The women sit in formation, not physically, but in the sense that their bodies move as if synchronized, each subtle motion mirroring the next. One of the prisoners drops to her knees from exhaustion, but the others circle around her, their movements fluid, almost ritualistic. The guards, already on edge from intercepted Allied messages, hesitate, unsure whether to intervene or to wait. Any action could provoke disaster, and yet, standing frozen, they feel the weight of responsibility press like lead on their chests. Every officer is aware that something is happening here that defies their training, defies logic, and defies historical precedent. There is a silent rule binding the women, a rule not written in any manual, not taught by any commanding officer, but carried in the rhythm of their movements and the subtle cadence of their voices. Meanwhile, the command rooms are in turmoil. Officers argue across maps littered with shifting troop positions, broken lines, and conflicting reports. Some insist the women are harmless, mere auxiliary personnel, while others fear the unknown. Convinced that the uniformed prisoners could carry secrets too dangerous to ignore, signals officers obsess over the messages. The cryptic note about keeping detainees standing. The intercepted phrases repeated across stations. Analysts trace lines on maps, but nothing aligns. Each plot seems plausible yet impossible. Every solution breeds a dozen more questions. One junior officer whispers to his colleague, voice low but shaking. It's like they're moving according to some intelligence we can't see, something beyond our comprehension. In the forest, minor incidents erupt into sudden panic. A guard trips over debris, weapon firing into the ground. The women's heads snap in unison, scanning the area with practiced alertness. Some guards claim to see figures moving in the fog, shadows slipping between trees, but no one can confirm their presence. Anxiety multiplies, as every minor misstep becomes a potential catastrophe. The prisoners, however, remain calm. They don't shout. They don't run. Their eyes are steady, scanning, calculating, a subtle hand gesture here, a shift of weight there, and they communicate silently across distance. Even the experienced officers can't tell whether these signals are conscious or instinctual, human or something else. Orders from higher command clash. Reinforcements are scheduled to arrive but are delayed. Supply trucks are misrouted. Radios are jammed. Officers attempt to regain control by shouting, waving maps, firing warning shots, yet each intervention seems to play into a carefully orchestrated rhythm. Every time a guard approaches with an order, the women anticipate it, adjusting their formation ever so slightly, staying one step ahead. Observers note an eerie symmetry. When chaos peaks, the prisoners' cohesion strengthens, as if they are feeding off the disorder rather than succumbing to it. Fear manifests differently among the human participants. Some guards tremble openly, convinced of imminent danger. Others mask terror behind rigid discipline, only to make mistakes that compound the confusion. Even senior officers, those accustomed to battlefield uncertainty, admit to sleepless nights, haunted by the question, why do these women follow this rule? What principle could be so absolute, so universally adhered to, that no threat, no exhaustion, no direct command could override it? Whispered rumors circulate. One sergeant claims the women are carrying a secret message embedded in their behavior. Another insists it's some psychological experiment in obedience. Yet no theory fully satisfies the growing sense of unease. Something bigger than any individual or unit is unfolding, a hidden mechanism of survival and control. Beyond immediate understanding, dawn breaks, but the world feels darker than night. Smoke curls over the horizon, the remnants of chaos still clinging to the treetops and muddy roads. The convoy that should have brought reinforcements lies shattered along the main route. Twisted metal, abandoned supplies, and the scattered forms of exhausted soldiers mark the scene. A sudden gust of wind carries the stench of burned fuel, mingled with the earthy smell of rain-soaked soil. The air is heavy, almost oppressive, as though it knows something unprecedented is about to occur. The women POWs are missing. At first, it seems impossible. Guards search frantically, rifles raised, shouting commands that echo and die in the fog. Officers scratch their heads over the maps that now seem meaningless. Every path checked, every building cleared, yet no trace of the women appears. Not a footprint, not a discarded glove, not a whisper of movement. It is as if the earth itself swallowed them whole. Panic sets in, mixing with confusion, anger, and disbelief. Reinforcements arrive late, misdirected. The fragmented units are forced into fragmented strategies, each more desperate than the last. They begin to understand that what they are facing is no ordinary escape. It is a disappearance orchestrated with precision and purpose.